Hey there, I'm Dr. Jim. I've been reading a lot about epidemics, pandemics, preparing for them, going beyond training that involves just universal precautions, cross-contamination, and hand washing. I have a question for you. Do you think that preparing for epidemics and pandemics will become or should become mandatory training? I'm starting to think that they should. Businesses of every kind have been disrupted. Hospitals have been pushed to their limits. Frontline staff in healthcare, employees in manufacturing, emergency services personnel, grocery store operators, and employees have all had to make rapid changes in order to continue operating. While no one saw this pandemic coming, it might now be time for companies of all kinds to develop training and education on preparing for epidemics and pandemics. So, a good place to start is to understand what the difference is between an epidemic and a pandemic. Leaders and employees throughout the United States and around the world in any industry can benefit greatly from annual training on preparing for the next crisis, whether it be an epidemic, a pandemic, a minor outbreak. An epidemic occurs when a communicable disease starts spreading around a local region to a larger geographical area. It can take place in one country and then spread perhaps to two or three others. An epidemic might also be a sudden spike in a particular disease over a small geographic area, like when typhoid fever occurred in 1906 in the city of Philadelphia. Excuse me, that was considered an epidemic. A pandemic, on the other hand, occurs when a communicable disease spreads to multiple geographical areas or continents around the world. Once it has infected large amounts of people and is still uncontained, most experts would agree that this constitutes a pandemic. So there are differences between the two, and it's good to know. There are a lot of problems with pandemics. Let me share a couple big ones. One of the main problems with pandemics is that they are largely ignored by most people until they become a major problem and begin making a lot of people sick or die. History is full of examples of epidemics and pandemics that were avoided because of early intervention and immediate action. Unfortunately, there are also many examples throughout history when people were aware of a potential health problem in the making, but they did nothing about it until it was too late. And I guess that's the point of training. We don't want it to be too late again. And certain industries got hit harder from this current pandemic than others. Perhaps healthcare will consider training on epidemics and pandemics a part of their annual mandatory compliance training. We already consider fires and disasters, severe weather, those are mandatory. So, seems logical. Another major problem, though, with pandemics is that it's very difficult to know what causes a specific disease. It's unknown. A lack of knowledge about how diseases spread from person to person is dangerous and many times deadly, having a lack of knowledge about how diseases spread. It takes a serious health risk and it exacerbates it more significantly, ultimately leaving people far more exposed than they should. So a lack of knowledge about what is happening is dangerous and deadly. While a lack of knowledge is a big problem, there's another one: misinformation. This can cause more health problems, more sicknesses, more damage, and death. And all you have to do is go surfing online to find a ton of sites giving misinformation. Taking the wrong precautions, for instance, fake information about how to protect yourself is very dangerous. So terminology, if we're going to get really serious about training for epidemics, training for preparing for pandemics, employees, staff, team members, they need to know this new set of words that we're going to be using. There is a terminology of epidemics and pandemics. If and when training for epidemics and pandemics becomes a reality for many businesses, learning the terms commonly used will be most helpful. Here are a few terms to know for this video. Animal-human interface spillover. Sound familiar? This refers to the interaction between humans and animals. The animals could be in the wild, raised on farms, or sold at markets around the world. Spillover occurs when an illness, like a virus, moves from one species to another. This is a fact. 2/3 of human viruses start in animals. Ebola, MERS, SARS, and HIV/AIDS are examples of human-animal interface spillover. Another term, emerging disease. What does that mean? This occurs when a communicable disease is first transmitted to a person and then begins to spread within a population. Throughout history, most communicable diseases don't spread much further than on a smaller local level, thankfully. These are also considered outbreaks of previously unknown diseases like the Zika virus and Lyme disease. Do you remember those two? We actually canceled a trip to Puerto Rico because of Zika. Endemic. What's an endemic? What does it mean? When a disease lingers around for a long period of time in a single geographic area, it's considered an endemic. It also means that a large portion of an area has come down with the disease. Here's some classic examples of endemics. Outbreaks of chickenpox, smallpox, malaria, and even the flu, influenza. Sporadic, another important term. An illness is considered sporadic when it has no apparent regularity and they are seen only occasionally, when diseases kind of pop in, pop out of existence. Sporadic diseases are less easy to transmit, and some examples include rabies and tetanus. Here's my takeaway. Epidemics and pandemics can devastate businesses and people's lives. They usually leave behind great human suffering and death. If lessons will be learned about the recent pandemic, shouldn't businesses of all kinds make plans to train and educate their employees how to better prepare for the next crisis? Thank you for taking some time. I hope you think critically about this. Will preparing for epidemics and pandemics become mandatory training? Please forward my video to your friends, your colleagues, around healthcare, around other industries. Get them talking about this. It might make a difference. And take a minute to subscribe to my channel. I appreciate it. My name's Dr. Jim, and I'll talk to you soon.